Welcome to Black Expat Stories, the show where we dive deep into the experiences of Black people across the diaspora who have boldly decided to immigrate abroad in search of a better life. I'm your host, Courtney Bowden, and I'm a Black American writer who also took the leap of faith and moved overseas. What happens when Black women stop chasing the American dream and start rewriting it for themselves and their families? I'm sitting down with 4 Black expat moms who are doing exactly that. You'll meet Crystal, a wife and mother of 2 teenage boys who moved her family to Mexico so her sons could experience life beyond the burden of race. Rachel, also a wife and mother of a spirited 4-year-old daughter who made the move while navigating postpartum depression and is now raising her child in an environment where rest and support are her new norm. Kissha, a single mom of 3, ages 16, 18, and 20, who's parenting from Mexico and navigating how to stay deeply connected while her children remain stateside. And Candice, a devoted mom to a daughter with disabilities who has built a life across Italy, Turkey, and now Spain in search of a gentler, more supportive world for them both. In this special episode, we explore what compelled each of these women to leave the U.S., how they're rebuilding support systems from the ground up, how their families are adjusting, and why choosing yourself is not just radical, but necessary, even when it defies everything society tells Black mothers they should be. So, if you've ever wondered what it might look like to create a freer life for your family beyond the confines of the American dream, this episode is for you. Today, I'm joined by 4 Black women who've each carved out their own unique paths abroad for themselves and for their families. And the beauty is they represent very different chapters and choices in their expat motherhood journey. This conversation is one that comes by popular demand from the Black Expat Stories audience. I'm not a mom. And people ask me all the time what it's like parenting abroad. And because I can't answer that question, I decided to tap these 4 brilliant Black women to speak to what it has been like to parent as a mom abroad. So, ladies, thank you so much for making the time and for being willing to share your journey. And whether you're a parent, an aspiring expat, or simply curious about how Black women are reshaping and reimagining what motherhood looks like across borders, this conversation is for you. So be sure to stay tuned in, share this if you're watching and if you're listening, and let's jump right in. So let's start with the why. Because deciding to uproot your family or yourself, your whole life, and move abroad is a big decision and it does not come lightly. So I want to start with you, Candice, since you have been living abroad the longest. What initially inspired your decision to leave the US with your daughter? And what did your family look like when you made the move?
It's really interesting because I started traveling intensely after I got divorced. I want to say that was like around separated around 2012 from my ex-husband, and I did my very first transatlantic trip to Paris. And when I landed in Paris, it was just like this big aha moment because we pulled up to the Airbnb, and our Airbnb was it was right there in the city center, not far from the Louvre. And people were like drinking wine in the middle of the afternoon, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, oh my God, these are my spirit people. I was like, this is amazing. And it was like that eye-opening moment that I knew that there was more for that in life that I could experience. And so I would travel frequently back and forth from the States to the Caribbean, from the States to Europe. And that's when I first started seriously considering, I wonder what life would be like living abroad. So in 2018, I decided to try my hand at living in Spain, in Barcelona. I want to say for 2 months or so, just to see like how would it feel to live my life a little bit longer than 2-3 weeks at a time. Decided Barcelona really wasn't for me. I liked it, but it wasn't for me. And then just so happened I took a trip to Rome, Italy with a friend. Italy really wasn't on my radar, but went to Rome and I absolutely fell in love with the city. Like that feeling that you feel when you're falling in love with a person. That's the way I felt being in Rome. And I just knew that I had to go back. So within a matter of 8 weeks, I came back. I told my family, listen, I am going to move to Rome. They're like, really? I was like, yeah. So we had everything. We had our codice fiscale. I had an apartment. I knew which visa I was going to get. I had all my documents. I had everything. And we moved back to Rome. So that was really my first aha moment about I'm going to live this life. And the night before I left for Rome, Italy, with my daughter, obviously that's a huge decision to make. I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, I was freaking out. What are you doing? And then it's like the second that the plane landed in Rome, it's like, you made the right choice. You made
Wow.
It's like my spirit just settled and I knew that I had made the right choice. And I have never regretted living abroad since.
Thank you for
Have
sharing that, Candice. And so, what about you, Crystal? What initially inspired your decision to leave the US with your husband and your sons in tow?
I've been traveling a lot too. And about 3 years ago, I went to Dubai and I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with Dubai. And then from me traveling, I would get back into the United States and just be so depressed. And I was like, God, there has got to be something else more than this. And just after praying to God, just like to let me know, because I don't know if I really connected that depression with me living abroad, but it was after Him showing me this is what you need to do. And just opening my eyes to this world is big. Like, I don't, just because I'm American does not mean I have to live in America. Just after all of my travels and things like that, started researching, and I had already been just experiencing depression and also experiencing the anxiety around what was going on in America. The political system was just getting worse and worse. Obviously, it's worse now, but the food in the United States just not happy with the bioengineered ingredients, the antibiotics that they're putting in our foods, all of the food dyes that they ban in other countries but allow in the United States. And I'm like, what is this food doing to us? And so I always say that I believe that the food in the United States is a direct correlation to why we have so many people walking around with cancer and diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of jump started my journey. And when I used to hear about people moving outside of the United States, it was Caucasian people. And I was just like, how can I do this as a working American, running my businesses, always not having time to really do the things that I want outside of the traveling? I just wanted more for me and my family. We did a lot of like back and forth talking with one another. When my husband and I we came to the decision, it was an easy decision, so it wasn't like I had to convince him, he had to convince me. It was like we were ready. So we initially said that we were going to give ourselves a year, and then we was like, why are we waiting? So we started to do the
Mm.
behind the scenes like stuff because we had two businesses that we needed to sell. And I had originally thought that my one business that I had been operating since 2016, it was going to be hard to sell because it was a large ticket sell. That was the first thing that was gone. So I said, after that, nothing is holding us here. This is going to happen, is possible. We
Yeah.
told our family, and after we made the decision, of course, everyone was very surprised. But I think they were surprised about the fact that we were leaving, but not surprised about the travel because I had already been traveling. We had already been traveling for years and years.
Yeah.
And now we're thriving and blessed here in Playa del Carmen.
I love that, Crystal. And it sounds like you and Candice really had your horizons expanded because of travel. And it allowed you to see, to your point, that the world is so much bigger. And the idea of wanting to better your quality of life, not just for you, but for your entire family, I think resonates with so many people. Now, what about you, Rachel? What initially inspired your decision to leave the US? And what did that look like for your family?
We were in what I would say our midlife crisis, my husband and I. We were pandemic parents and we really just felt abandoned. And we were at the point where we were ready to do something drastic or give up. And I was in the state of mind, I was postpartum. I was panicking because things were opening up from the pandemic, but I still didn't trust the environment and the atmosphere. And then in Texas, we kind of are the Wild West with guns, and there was an issue when an active shooter was near my daughter's daycare, and it was just like so much. And on top of that, just the feeling of being stuck in a loop or feeling trapped, because we had already been trapped inside from the pandemic, and now we're able to get outside, but now we're trapped in our minds. We got on TikTok. We were new to the app because I was like, I'm not going to download another app. I don't dance, that type of situation. But got on TikTok, and that was some of the first things that came up on my For You page is Black people living in Mexico, they're living in Spain, they're living here. What is this? Like, it really opened my eyes to a new world and a new way of living. And we were at that point of desperation that we were willing to try anything new. And we wanted to live somewhere where we could feel free to live with our daughter and give her an experience that we didn't have. So it was a very short conversation. Darnell, he was just like, hey, one day, because we weren't talking a lot, but he was like, hey, you want to try this with me? And I was like, let me do some research because I've seen it. And we did. We agreed we were going to jump. And wherever we landed was wherever we landed. And I just have to say, without TikTok, I don't think we would be here, which is so weird and cliche maybe to say. Social media has such an impact, but seeing people that I have now met in Playa living, and young Black women just doing the thing, some of them single moms, and they're brave enough to move out here with no one and know no one. So the fact that we were able to do that, I'm so glad we did. I'm so proud, and I'm so glad we met. We've met who we have met.
Yeah, Rachel, that's such a beautiful story. And our stories intersect because we're friends. And on top of that, it's funny because the idea of moving abroad was flipped between our spouses. I was the one that brought the idea to my husband, and your husband was the one who brought the idea to you. And you were open minded enough to at least do some research. Thank God for social media. Social media has its drawbacks, but at the same
It
time,
does.
it really has done a great job of exposing people to new ideas, new people, and new
Yes.
experiences. So,
Yes.
Kissha, now to you. You're a mom of three, right? And
Yeah.
what made you say, I'm going to leave the US? And how did you come to the decision to do that solo while you parent your kids stateside?
It was a huge decision. At the time, I was going through a separation from my husband. We'd been together for 16 years. And during that time of my separation, COVID hit. So I'm in the house with three teenagers. At the time, they were 11, 13, and 15 during that time. So I've turned into a single mom, stuck in the house with three children. I had literally just lost everything. I had gotten evicted from an apartment. Life was just whatever could have happened during that time was happening. I began to pick myself back up, but I went into a complete depression to the point where I would go home. I would be at home working, but I'd be in my room with the door shut, and my kids would be in the house. So during that time, two of my closest friends from Atlanta had moved here. They came down to visit. And when they got here, I was like, y'all are going to leave and you're not going to come back. What am I going to do? Y'all are my closest friends right now. I'm going through this horrible period in my life and y'all are leaving me. And they did exactly what I said. They didn't come back. They moved to Playa and didn't come back.
That's what happens often.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, so let me just go check out this place y'all moved to. So I ended up coming down here. This was October 2020, and immediately fell in love like everybody else. I had never been out of the country before. got my passport September 2020, came here in October 2020. And I was like, yo, this is peaceful. So I just kept coming back. Like each trip, I'd send the kids to go stay with their dad. He was in Tennessee at the time. Each trip kept getting longer and longer. Like I'd call and be like, hey, no, I was only supposed to be gone for 2 weeks, but I'm going to be gone for another 2 weeks. And then the next trip, it'd be like, okay, I'm gone for 2 months. So I started finding myself again. I was allowed to spend some time to where I was decompressing. I was getting just really going through a healing process. So I finally came back home in July 2021. I ended up losing my job. And I was like, you know what, enough's enough. So I had, during that time, had started a business here. And I was actually hosting parties in Tulum. So I looked at the kid's dad and I was like, I've got to figure something out. I was like, I got to figure out ways to make money. I was like, I've got to figure out what I can do for myself. And I've seen people do it before. And I guess within the Black community, a lot of times all the pressure is put on the mom. And the mom has to be there. She has to be there. She has to do this. She has to do that. And I was like, a lot of times we don't get the time to take care of ourselves. And if mom's not right, nobody's right. So I was like, here's the kids. I'm moving to Mexico. I'm going to get things in order and I'll be back in a year. 4 years have passed and I'm still here. But it has actually been, it was hard at first because I've been with my kids every day all these years, but I knew I needed to do what was best for all of us. And it basically was the best thing that I could have done financially. I ended up getting another job in February of 2022. So I was working a job, running 2 businesses at this point. Everything financially was getting better. My health was getting better. I was aging backwards. Like I was actually taking care of myself. So like I said, it was a hard decision to do, but I had to keep in mind that it wasn't a permanent decision. And again, if I'm not right within myself, it's not going to matter if I'm home with my kids or not. I'm in a room with the door shut. So we had conversations. I gave them the option. It wasn't like I left and said, no, y'all can't come. I gave them the decision. I was like, you decide, do you want to come? After I decided I was going to stay longer, I was like, do you want to come? I was like, I'd love to have you here. And they were all like, no, we're good. I've basically been virtual mom. That's what I call myself. My friends are like, you probably talk to your kids more now than you did when they were right next to you because they call all day, every day. I'm doing homework. My son's calling me with sports. He's practicing. He's got the phone up. And it's actually been a time where we've gotten closer, even though we're not physically with each other. We've actually built better relationships amongst all of us.
You say it's a tough decision, and I'm sure it was for everyone here. And it's also a very brave decision because not everybody may agree. And we'll get into that because I know that when there are children involved, family tends to get very concerned. And I want to talk about a little bit later how each of your families responded to your decision making. But Kissha, you raise a really good point about oftentimes moms bearing the brunt of all of the mental, physical, and emotional labor of parenting. And so you decided to flip that on its head and drop them kids off at their daddy's house. Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he wasn't too excited at first, but I was like, I got to fix myself. And even after the year where I was supposed to come back, I was like, hey, financially, this is actually working for us right now. I'm literally at a point where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore. I'm not stressed. I can take care of 2 households. And again, that's not what they consider the norm in our community. And I've never been one to live within a norm. I've always been the one in my family that everybody's like, yeah, she's the rebellious one. I was like, I'm going to do what works for me. I don't care. And I got a lot of backlash for it. A lot.
Ooh, we're going to get into that. Now, Crystal, Rachel, and Candice, you're raising your children with you in Spain and here in Playa del Carmen. What were you hoping your children would gain or be spared from by living abroad?
I know for myself, from the moment that I was pregnant with my daughter, I always knew I wanted to raise a global citizen. I always wanted to teach my child multiple languages because that was something that was important to me. I'm multilingual and I speak 5 languages, so that was always something to pass on to my child. And so for me, I think the benefit of having my daughter to have a worldview and to feel like she belongs everywhere and in every space, and to be able to embrace her humanity and feel like she can go anywhere on the planet and connect with another human being, and to be able to see. I've been traveling with my daughter since she was little. We also used to live in Puerto Rico, and just to see the way my daughter is able to just easily get on a plane, we go to another country. By the time we get there, she's already Googled how to ask for Wi Fi or whatever else she needs in another language. She touches down and she's just able to connect, and it's easy for her. And I love seeing that part of her blossom. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I spared her from was, I know this might be controversial, but like that strong Black woman persona or pseudo persona. And she's gotten to live a very soft Black girl life living abroad. And I'm really glad that she's had that. Just seeing her, like when we lived in Italy, living someplace that's very safe, or even for her being autistic, like in Florida, I would never allow her to just go to a cafe by herself and like dilly dally around. No. But when we were in Rome and even in Turkey, she was afforded those opportunities because I feel like, one, people have a lot more respect for human life. And then two, people have a lot more respect for people that have disabilities. So in our experiences, people have been so kind and generous to her because they can see that she's disabled. So I remember when I first allowed her to start going out in the neighborhood when we lived in Italy, and we lived in Rome. So I gave our neighbors like a heads up, like, hey, I'm going to start letting her go out by herself. And like, Candice, don't worry. They're like, we'll watch out for her and it's okay. And even in Turkey, I would let her go out. And we even had some of our neighbors contact me like, hey, Candice, I just saw Maya out by herself. Do you know that she's outside of the house by herself? I'm like, yes, I know. They're like, okay, are you okay? Because we just wanted to make, I saw her without you and you guys are always together. Are you okay? And just to have that community and have her to grow up in the village and understanding that the village is global.
Yes.
Because the village is global and there are good people everywhere that will have your back. That's what I've provided my daughter with.
That's beautiful. And Candice, I know a lot of parents watching can really resonate with what you just said with having the village, because it seems
Yeah.
like in the United States, that village is shrinking for some people or it's non existent altogether. And on top of that, to your point about the respect for human life, I grew up in an area where there were, we can't say this word online, but there were mass incidents, mass drills in schools for incidents. And they're doing them now in daycares. That just was not a thing. And so to know that your daughter is safe to roam the neighborhood that you live in, to know that your neighbors are looking out for her, I think that's another layer of peace that gives you as a parent. So thank you for sharing that. Now, what about you, Crystal? What were you hoping your kids gained, and what were you hoping that they would be spared from by living abroad?
I just really didn't think we were free in America. And I wanted my Black boys to really feel free, like really feel free to be their authentic selves, to walk down the street. My oldest is 16 years old, and while I just reminded him the other day that yes, you have to keep your head on a swivel, right? Be aware of your surroundings, but like in the United States, at 14 years old, we're having to have these type of conversations with him. If you encounter a cop, make sure your hands are out. Make sure you don't take anything out your pockets. Make sure you're respectful. Make sure they can see your hand. Don't put your hoodie on. We haven't had to have any of those conversations with our children. And now our 16-year-old, we're giving him a little bit more freedom being here in Mexico to walk like down on Fifth, but just feeling free to be able to be yourself and for them to be able to put down like the status quos and the things that we've all learned in the United States, and then we move to another country and really have to like relearn those things, because it's like, why were we doing that? Them learning another language, Spanish, has been a really good learning experience for them. Immersing themselves in in another culture outside of American culture, because in America we got caught up on this whole American dream, but who was the American dream created for?
Okay, wake it up.
Not us. Not us, right? Now that we're looking at colleges in the future for my son, where he always used to just think in the United States where he just go to a American school. No, you have possibilities and they're endless. You can go to college anywhere you want. You can go in Spain, you can go in Germany. Like you have options as a Black boy. I would say the number one biggest thing was just to that they don't have to deal with the same type of struggles like in the United States as Black boys, and really being and feeling free.
As you were talking, Crystal, I literally got goosebumps because I know so many folks watching can relate to that feeling that you have as a parent, that you had in your decision making. So thank you so much for articulating that. And Rachel, with your toddler in tow, what were you hoping that she would gain and be spared from by living abroad?
We wanted to gain the village. We didn't feel the village when we were in the United States, I'm sorry to say. And part of that can be attuned to me. The pandemic really messed with my mental. So I just was trying to protect my child. So I wasn't letting the village in either. But here, we just wanted to experience the freedom, like Crystal said, the peace, like Candice said. And although our daughter is 4, I don't think my friends are letting their 4-year-olds out by themselves in our little Pravada to play. Like, we just, it was hard to let go and do that for me, but I still watch. I'm very vigilant. But yeah, no worries. If something happens, I'm an earshot away. But those kids out there will run and knock on the door and senora, senoras. We have a community here, and I honestly, the only thing I can say that we spared is her life.
Wow.
I really feel like something terrible was going to happen to us. We were going to be shot. That was just my fear every time I walked outside. And I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't taking my child anywhere. So now we're here. My mind has relaxed. I've become a lot more of a relaxed mom or relaxed parent. And I can let her live and I can live too. And my husband can live. And now we can all live in harmony instead of dysfunction, because I was sending us into dysfunction because I wasn't okay.
This is what I say. In the United States, there is a very special brand of capitalism that strips you of whatever you need inherently to live and thrive as a human being, and then they sell it back to you. So just from hearing all of your accounts of parenting abroad, allowing your kids to have that freedom to get to know their neighbors, to know that your neighbors and your friends that you've made are watching out for them. I'm not sure if folks can say the same living in the US. I comment to my husband all the time because we live in a family friendly neighborhood. There's so many kids here and they're playing outside all day long from the time the sun is up until the time the sun goes down. And there's nothing more gratifying than hearing the laughter of children. To me, that is so healing. And in the States, I got to tell you, I lived in a neighborhood, a residential neighborhood, and I very rarely saw kids playing outside. I very rarely saw people just leave their doors open at the very least. So I think that all of this is so major when we talk about raising the next generation. So now I want to turn to what it took to uproot your life. How did you plan emotionally, logistically? And how did your children respond when you told them that you were moving?
I guess I'll answer because I did not plan on it really. Mine was like really spur of the moment. It was a rash decision. And I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody because the way I did it was really crazy. I had been entertaining the idea, but like the minute that I made the decision, that decision was very spur of the moment. I was in Rome with my friend. I literally turned to her and I'm like, I'm moving here. And she's
Mm,
like, Are you serious? I was like, I'm serious because I had never in my life felt every fiber of my body needing to be someplace than I did in that moment. Like I said, within an 8-week turnaround time, I had flown back home. I told my family I'm moving to Rome. My daughter was like, okay, but by that time we had moved back from Puerto Rico and she knows she's okay, mommy's kind of crazy anyways and doing these things. So whatever. And my daughter is happy as long as she's happy anyway, as long as she has me and her Wi-Fi and good food, she's good. I had 2 dogs at that time, so I had to like strategize how I was going to get my dogs here. But just getting an apartment, I feel like just everything in the universe had opened up for this to be a yes. So I got my apartment, my codici fiscale, everything lined up. I found what visa program we were going to be on and everything. And it's so funny because I remember when I went back to get my visa to stay, my long term visa to stay in Italy, we had to actually leave Rome and fly back to Florida for the appointment. And I had everything, like all my documents lined up, like everything was in a file, labeled, everything, because I had never done the process before. So I didn't know what that was going to look like. So I walk in dressed to the nines, and the man, he looks at me and he takes my file. He gives me like a little smile. And I guess he's like, oh, she means business today. And I want to say our appointment was on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. We had our passports back with our Italian visas in them on that Saturday.
wow. Quick
So
turnaround.
that was a yes from the universe that we needed to be there. And everything just worked out really smoothly. So I think my daughter responded well because, like I said, it was Rome is just one of those cities. It's like an open air museum. She and I love history. I do a version of world schooling with her that includes unlearning. So we focus a lot of the curriculum around what it is that she's naturally interested in. So I think it was a time for her to do like a lot of exploring, and she loved the level of freedom that she was able to have because she was getting older and she wanted some level of independence, and because the environment was so safe, I was able to give that to her. And I wanted to, there was something, I believe it was Rachel, I believe you said something about how your nervous system calmed down. I always say you can't heal in the same place that you were traumatized in. And I think our people are so traumatized. It's the epigenetic ancestral trauma that we continually outlive. And then for those of us like you ladies and our families, we've removed ourselves from that trauma. So our nervous systems are able to actually relax and heal. And we don't have to feel like we have to hide ourselves, and we can live out loud for the first times in our lives because we don't feel like we have to don't be too much for the environment, or don't do this, or stay out of people's way so that you don't, it's none of that noise that's going on in your mind. And so for me to be able to have my daughter experience that, she received the entire experience very well. And even to this day, she's like, I never want to live in the United States. I never want to live in the United States ever again. She wants to live over here because she enjoys the lifestyle.
Yeah. Now, Candice, did you have a co-parent to run the decision by? And if so, how did you navigate custody and how did those conversations unfold for you?
You know what? I didn't. So my daughter's biological father, he wasn't really involved. And then my ex-husband, he actually unfortunately passed away like a year after we moved. So although my daughter would communicate with him some, there was really no co-parent to have to navigate, which honestly I'm grateful for, because I do hear some nightmare stories in terms of people wanting to control and not let their child leave the country. Or I have one friend who actually moved to another country. She gave birth in that country, so her child is by birth a dual citizen. And then the father recently decided to pop back up and say, "Oh, I want visitation rights and I want partial custody of the daughter of their child." And that was really a crazy situation. And the government from that country was like, "This child is a citizen of our country, so if you want to do that, you need to come over here." And he
Hmm.
did it.
Oh, wow.
He did it.
It
So
does get sticky.
yeah, it can get sticky. So I'm grateful I did not have to navigate that.
Now, Crystal, what about you? How did your boys respond to the decision to move abroad?
Yeah, my boys weren't initially excited at all. In fact, my teenager, he didn't give us like pushback, but internally I think that he was going through some things. And probably my 11-year-old too, but they weren't excited. They were not excited. And then once they got here, it was a lot of like conversation around racism because they thought that they was going to experience that. And when we walk through that with them, nobody's judging you on being black here.
Mm.
And the other hang up was they didn't know Spanish. And I was like, but you know English. You are valuable too. You got to remember your worth as well. It took a lot of just conversation with them and holding their hand because they didn't understand. They had left all their friends and then they're here in this new country and now they have to make new friends, which was very intimidating in the beginning. It was very intimidating. I would say from the time that we said that we were going to move, not including like the research time, it was probably like 6 months. Once we knew we were going to move, I started to do the research about how to get our visas and things like that. And like I said, we at the time we were renting, so we didn't have to sell a house, but we had to sell two businesses. But it was like things just happen. And I feel like when things happen so easily like that, it's meant to be. Like
Right.
it's meant to, when God opens doors so easily like that and you just walk through them like it's meant to happen. So I really can't say that we experienced any type of hiccups or anything like that in our preparation. The other thing too was that my boys had to realize we all had to realize too, to just be open to change
Yeah.
and be open to experiencing this new type of peace.
Because this type of peace that we feel, it is
Yes.
initially foreign, right? And we
Yes.
don't always know what to do with it. And Crystal, I commend you for staying the course because I know many families whose children were not enthusiastic about the move and they had a really hard time adjusting to the point where those families decided to move back to the States. So I not only commend you, but your family for just embracing this journey and adapting and immersing themselves into school, the culture. And it sounds like they're thriving and it sounds like they have many friends.
They have a lot of friends, and not just friends that look like them, but friends that are from other parts of the world. Another thing that in the beginning, when you move out of America, it's like you just want to rest. There was a moment where we were just like isolated, and not for any reason. We weren't familiar with this type of freedom and peace, so we just found ourselves for the first couple months just isolating. And
Yeah.
then God was like, okay, it's time to get to work. So I started to see that there was a need in the community here as far as children, because I have children and teenagers. Sometimes our kids can go by the wayside and we don't really pick up on what they need. And what I was seeing was that there's a lot of events that's going on here for adults, but there's nothing specifically geared to children. So I created a group here, Teens of Playa. And so what we do is we actually get kids together once a month to make sure that we keep them engaged. So yes, it's fine to still have your friends back from the United States, but some of those friends, just like my friends, they will fall off. So it's important that when you move abroad, you have to look for, you have to have community. Community is important. And so now what my children do is, even at school, they had another young boy come to the school, and now they're paying it forward. They're making other children feel welcomed. And the community here in Playa is just amazing.
I love to hear that, Crystal. And when I heard that you created that community for the teenagers here, I was like, yes, because there's so many families that will appreciate it. And Playa, for some people, has this reputation of being a party city. It's known for vacations and tourism. And a lot of people don't realize that there are families here, there are residential areas here. And so by you creating that community, fostering and nurturing that, people will have a soft place to land. So way to pay it forward. Thank you for that. And Rachel, I know that you had a toddler, a 2-year-old at the time. She probably wasn't involved in in the decision making conversations, but
No, we didn't tell her a thing. We just packed her a bag and picked her up and took her to the airport. But so our transition and our talk was really between me and Darnell. And we just had to figure out how committed we were going to be to do this for her. And we decided once we got here to use her as our gauge. Our transition here was not easy. Nothing went according to plan. It was just off kilter. And in looking at videos and TikToks of other Black women who decided to stick it out the expat life, be it with children or not, something that resonated with me is that you'll figure out if you're true to this life or not, because we had several setbacks to where another family or person would have just been like, all right, I quit, I'm going home. But so a lot of our transition was rushed. When we got here, we weren't able to settle in. We weren't able to rest and look around and figure things out. We had never been here together before. I had come to Playa like 9 or so years prior for my friend's wedding, and that was the only time, and never came back. So this was our first time doing an international trip as well as a family, and Darnell and I as a married couple. Like within 2 weeks of us being here, our daughter was in school where she knew no Spanish. All she heard was English, and we just threw her in there and we used her as our gauge. We were like, if she thrives, we'll stay. If she doesn't and she keeps giving us signals that it's time for us to go, we'll dip. And it is really because of her that we are here, because I would have been gone.
I do know your story, and I commend your resilience and your ability to bounce back and embrace people in the community. And
Yes,
so it's been beautiful watching your daughter grow up here and watching her thrive, watching her become bilingual. I'm Auntie Courtney,
yes,
so I get to
yes,
watch it
important.
firsthand, and it's such a gift. And I can definitely, from the outside looking in, say that it seems like it was a great decision, not only for her, but for your entire family.
Absolutely. But I just want to tell other moms or just expat people, stay the course if you really feel like it's for you and maybe everything doesn't align, but stay the course, because not giving up has improved, I guess, my mental capacity. And knowing that I can and we can work through hard things if we're giving the space and opportunity and the peace to process these things and move forward. I feel like in America, people with children are excluded from activities because we have kids and therefore ticket prices are higher. It's going to cost more for you to get in or whatever. But yeah, I just feel like here in Mexico, everything is black or white. They are very direct. This is how much it is. This is when we're going to do it.
Can I piggyback off of what she said? Because what she said kind of
Yeah,
triggered a thought for me.
sure.
I think one of the things that I love the most about living abroad is the family friendliness. And that's what Rachel said that kind of I picked up, especially living in Turkey. Italy is family friendly too, but Turkey in particular was extremely family friendly. You go to a restaurant, you go anywhere you go, you can tell that they created this with family in mind. It's nothing to see go to a restaurant and like little kids are like running across the restaurant and the waiters are playing with them, or maybe like a toddler takes off running across someplace and then somebody will pick the toddler up and bring it back to their parent. There's just this understanding that family is first. And I think one of the biggest lies and untruths about the United States is that it's family first. It is not a family first nation.
No,
And
no.
maybe it was a family first nation at some point in time, but it is definitely not a family first nation now. And so I think if you're a parent and you're considering making that move, making sure that you're moving to a country that is in alignment with strong family values, because that's going to make your life so much easier. Like even living here in Spain, they recently just passed a law giving single parents the same pay rate and the same amount of paid time off as married couples. And legally, like people who aren't married in Spain, they have a legal cohabitation provisions for them in the law. So if you are a single parent or you're like a married or cohabitation couple, you all get the same pay rate and same paid time off, because they say a child, regardless of whether they have one parent or two parents, they still need the same amount of care. And so
Yeah.
to make it fair and equal for the child, for the benefit of the child, they make the pay rate and time off the same for single and married parents. And for me, that was very significant. That was a good signal to me, because that shows me that they're worried about the benefit of the child, because they understand that when the child has parents who are not stressed out and live in a supportive environment, that is going to ultimately produce a better and more mentally stable citizen. So I love living in family friendly countries, because when they take holidays, I know it's probably the same there in Mexico. When there's a holiday, it's the holiday. Do your grocery shopping the day before. Stores are going to be closed. People are going to be partying. If you didn't get your food beforehand, you're going to be hungry until Monday. Like, just don't even know what to tell you.
That's true. Unless you have some friendly neighbors or some friends that will
Exactly.
invite you over, you're right. And it's beautiful to see because, and I say this all the time, coming here to Mexico helped me understand that I'm human in a whole new way. Because in the United States and that capitalistic structure, everything is calibrated to machinery.
Yep.
But where we live, both in Spain and here in Mexico, things are calibrated to the pace of humanity. And
Yep.
that makes a huge difference. So I'm really glad that you both brought
And,
up the idea or this concept of family friendliness. Go ahead, Rachel.
and kids don't go with the flow. That's like literally not why they exist. So you can't calibrate something that doesn't want to be calibrated. And
Yeah.
it parenting in the United States, that's what made at least the beginning for me hard, because I felt like I needed to have her regimented right out of the womb when she doesn't know anything.
Wow. Yes. And I think that's the beauty of raising children in these places abroad is that they do get to be children. They don't they're not conditioned to be little adults. They're not adultified so early on. Now, Kissha, how did your children respond when you told them that you were moving?
They were, I think because I had spent the first year going back and forth, I don't know, I can't really answer for them. They never were very vocal about it. I'm always real open with my kids. My mom used to always tell me I tell them too much and I talk to them about too much, but I'm like, why sugarcoat it? This is life. This is what happens. As time has gone on, I've asked them, how did you feel about me leaving? Because for the first year, they didn't have a passport that I was here. And this goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago. Their dad wouldn't sign off on their passport. He was like, so you're going to take the kids and not come back? And I was like, no, that's not how this works. I was like, I would love for my kids to come. So I fought with that for the first year. So they didn't have an option to come. So then when I finally did get their passport and they were already used to being in Tennessee with their dad, they made their friends. So the conversation was like, are you sure you don't want to come? And they're like, no, I'm good. And like I had said earlier, I didn't want to force them. I could have just been like, come on, you're coming. It is what it is. But they were all in high school. And I had to understand that it'll be a really hard transition. But like Crystal said, it's that I didn't really want them to be mad. So I was in a place where I was like, do I force them to come or do I just let them do what they want? So I continuously, like I said, have had the conversation with them to be like, you sure you still don't want to come? Yeah. I want you to see different. I want you to realize that there's more out here than being in the US, because I still worry. Like everybody has their children with them. I'm the mom sitting here. I got a 20-year-old Black son, and the area that they stay in Tennessee is not for us. I still worry on a daily basis. I want them to see that there's more out here. But again, I gave them the option, and they know that because they had the option to come. It's not, oh, I'm mad because mom left. The biggest challenge I've had is trying to keep other people out of their head. So
let's get into that, because Kissha, you shared with me how family and loved ones were initially not on board with your decision. So I want to ask this question of all of you, but I want you to answer it first, Kissha. What was that conversation like? You said that you did not have support from your family, but I do want to hear from you other ladies too. So Kissha, did it feel like you were going against the grain?
Definitely. My parents weren't as rough as some other ones. They were just kind of like, okay, whatever. They didn't understand it, but they weren't as vocal about it. I could tell they were holding back. Like, why do you want to go move to Mexico? Why do you want to do this? I got a lot of backlash from other family members and friends that literally would be like, why are you leaving your kids? And I had to, for the longest, even for the first 6 months I was here, like I got really sick because I held on to what everybody else was saying instead of working on myself and healing myself and realizing none of y'all pay my bills. None of y'all were there when I was evicted from my apartment. None of y'all were there when I was going through my separation. None of y'all were there when I was depressed. I had my few friends that I had met while I was in Atlanta that knew exactly what I was going through. But the people that were around me majority of my life, all they saw was, oh, she moved to Mexico, she's partying. Because like I said, I was running an entertainment business here, an event business. So yeah, I was at a party, but I was making money to make sure my kids were taken care of. And I had to finally block that noise out and be like, this is not your story. This is my story. I spent many a days praying about this, asking God, was this what I was supposed to do? Even in the first 6 months, it wasn't even the first 6 months. I moved here August 2021 after I sent them to their dads. And then I was back home by December. And I had to stay home for 2 months to regroup. And even during that time, I was just like, God, was this the right decision for me? I've got all these people saying, oh, you left your kids, you left your kids, you left your kids, continuously playing over and over in my head. And he was like, no, I opened up this door for you so you can go do what you need to do for your family, take care of your family. They're okay. They're fine. They're with a father that's able to take care of them. Again, it does not have to always go on the mom, and you'll be fine. So I literally Came back February 2022, blocked out all the noise, and was like, this is my journey. This is what I've got to do. My kids are okay. They understand. My daughter's here now. She's going to be here. It'll be a full 3 months that she's here with me. And it's even opened her, even though she doesn't live with me, while she was in her first few years of high school, she was like, oh, I want to go move to France. I'm going to take French because I see myself. So they see it even though they're not in it. They know that the option is there if they want to go.
Yeah. And it seems like you are that tangible example for them
Mhm.
of what is possible and of what it looks like to choose yourself. Because I think
Yeah,
oftentimes moms have a hard time modeling that for their children.
I've had so many people. I actually did a Zoom call with a lot of my friends from back home because I had actually posted one time. I went on a rant because I kept hearing that she left her kids. And I was like, and I've had people here in Playa that have been around me and they're like, as much as you talk to your kids on a daily basis, like they've seen me be that, what I call the virtual mom. Like I said, just because I'm not physically there doesn't mean I'm not making sure the kids are on the bus in the morning, making sure their homework's done, making sure they got to work on time, all of that. I'm still parenting from a distance. And I've had people come to me to say, I love your story. I admire you for your story. You did what you needed to do for yourself so that you could be there for your children. And a lot of moms don't get that credit.
How does that
Go
make you
ahead.
feel now to, you encountered all of that criticism and now you have moms sharing that you are an inspiration to them?
It's made it a lot easier because there are days where I'll sit and I'll be like, dang, I wish my kids were here. This past holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas was the first time I've ever not been with my kids because I usually go home for, if it's not Thanksgiving, it's always Christmas. And it's those are always hard times for me. So I do sometimes sit back and think, did I really leave my kids? So sometimes that does sit back and play in my head. But then when I do have those people that come and they're like, no, you have an amazing story. You have to pat yourself on the back for that because you did think about yourself and what you could do better for your kids. So it does make me look back now and be like, yeah, I did this. I'm better mentally. My health is better. Like I said, my relationship with my kids is a lot stronger. And I've just done this for us at the end of the day. I've done
Yeah.
it for us
Yeah.
and not lived to, like I said before, not lived up to what the norm is for a mom and a single mom at that.
Right. Now, Candice, Rachel, and Crystal, talk to me about the support that you received or maybe did not receive from your family when you decided to move abroad.
So for myself, I received a lot of support from my mother. She was really supportive. And actually, she would travel with me. In the beginning, she was like, I don't want to get on that flight. I'm like, Mom, you are retired. You ain't got nothing to do. So just come with us. And so then she just kind of got used to being there. And actually, before the start of COVID, she had actually flown in to Rome, Italy to come get my daughter. And she took her back to Florida for some grandma time. And I flew to Istanbul for a solo trip, which was supposed to be just 10 days. And then I got stuck there during the COVID lockdown. So when we left Rome, every life was normal. And then probably I want to say within a week or two later, the world was locked down. I was in Turkey. Italy underwent the very first lockdown, and I had received a text message from the Turkish government saying all flights to and from Italy have been canceled due to COVID. And I was like, oh, wow. So I'm here for an undetermined amount of time. My mom was really supportive in that, and she just went with the flow, even when I decided to buy property in Turkey because the real estate prices were so low in Turkey because of COVID that I was like, I would be a fool not to purchase property because during that time, you can purchase property as a foreigner, you can purchase property of any amount and receive a property ownership residency. So I was able to get residency not only for myself, but for my daughter and for my mother. She was quite supportive. I think the rest of my family just really didn't get it. They didn't get it. And it's interesting because sadly my mother passed away 3 years ago in Istanbul, Turkey, after having complications with COVID. And I think my family, I don't think, I know, because like even my brother said something. My brother and my aunt said something. They blamed me for my mom passing, and like I took her to this foreign country and that's the reason why she passed away. And they were thinking the healthcare system failed my mom. I was like, Turkey has a better healthcare system than the United States. You can literally look up like the healthcare index. Turkey's healthcare system is better than the United States. And I'm like, I had to rationalize with them. People passed away in the States from COVID. It was hurtful. But I think during that process, after my mom passed, talking to some of my aunts, because I never had a close relationship with my family. And after she passed, it opened this weird door where people were starting to communicate with me more. And so my aunt, she didn't even really know what I did abroad. She didn't know. I'm like, I have a life. I have a business. I have several businesses. I own a home. I have friends. I'm part of organizations. I'm doing, and she was just like, oh, and she was like, and I remember we were talking on the phone, making arrangements for my mom's funeral. And she heard me speaking Turkish to the taxi driver. And she was like, hold on, wait, you speak Turkish? I'm like, yeah. Like they didn't even know. It just realized how much they just did not know about me as a person or my life abroad. And so I think once they understood, like, oh, Candice is not just on this perpetual vacation. Because I think that's what they thought. Like Candice just lives this perpetual vacation lifestyle. And that she actually has a full-fledged life going on, like an everyday life going on. I think they at least understood a little bit more. And I think now that you have everything that's going on in the States, I do have a couple of my cousins that have reached out to me like, hey, we're considering leaving the States, and asking me for advice. But luckily for me, I've never really, I don't know, I just done my own thing. I never really needed their validation because they really weren't a part of my life like that. And they don't understand me and that pull that's inside of me to be a part of the global community. I can't say they were terribly supportive, but part of that was just the fact that I just kind of blocked them out. Yeah.
I think that's where I struggled the most, was because I've always been, like I said earlier, the type of person that would just do whatever I wanted to do. But being a mom, it was like a different trigger. It was just like, oh, I'm going to be judged. Like they're judging me as a mom. So it was like I put me and that mom in two different categories instead of saying Keisha's still Keisha. At the end of the day, I don't care what anybody thinks. This is what I'm doing. And until you start paying some bills, don't worry about it.
Okay. Period.
But again, it was that what the United States conditions you to think as a mother. So it was like there's no handbook to this, but people make up handbooks and say, no, a mama has to be there 24 hours a day. She has to do this. She has to do that. Kids also have fathers or grandparents or whomever can also step in and help. Yeah, that's why that was such a struggle for me, trying to balance Keisha and a mom and not realizing it's the same person at the end of the day.
Because you're a human with needs.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What about you, Crystal? What's the story of your family's response when you decided to move abroad?
I feel like I went through this process when I was about to turn 40, and that happened to me at 35, where I was just like, you know what, y'all? I'm about to start living my true, authentic life, and I don't care how anyone feels about it because this is my life. So within that year of me announcing to my family and friends, I came out to them, told them that I was bisexual. They didn't understand that because they're like, wait, you're married? And then it was this announcement that we were moving to another country. And so it was a lot, right? And in the beginning, my husband and I really had to block out noise. And so my stance was, while I care about your feelings, I don't care about your opinions because this is my life. This is my life, right? So I feel I got support, but I got a lot of silent hate too. I got a lot
Ooh.
of silent jealousy. And fast forward to a year and a half, we're thriving here and blessed here in Playa. I get a lot of, wow, you guys are really making it. But it's like something else is behind that, right? You feel it. It's almost like, dang, I'm just gonna sit back and watch them because I don't believe that they doing this. I'm still gonna watch. It's not that real genuine like support. And so what I try to do is I try to be that beacon of light to people now that are moving abroad. And I think we don't talk about it enough, the emotions like that goes through when you have family and friends that separate themselves from you because you have decided to make a decision like this for you and your family.
Right. Yes.
There's really something to be said about that emotional response because I had to deal with that. I had to deal with the jealousy that I was feeling from family and friends that I thought that loved me. And then I had to realize and come out of that and be like, they still love you. First of all, you have given them a lot to digest. So I had to give people grace. I had to give people a chance to sit back and watch. It is really a new culture and a new lifestyle for people. My mom, I always say she's 83 years old and your traditional Baptist mom and everything that comes to that. And like Kissha said, I'm the rebel child, got tattoos. So it was a lot. And so even in my healing, I had to learn to give grace. And now those same people have come back and they're just like, wow, I'm really proud of you. So I experience more so of the support from my move now,
Ah.
not so much during the process. It wasn't that.
Mm.
Now I can really appreciate and always say this is why community is so important too in your new country because you will have natural attrition of people, you will lose friends, you will lose family. It just is going to happen and you have to sell yourself like we told ourselves it is going to be okay. You will find your community, you will find your tribe. This whole thing of moving abroad comes with a journey of healing, like I'm sure we all have had to partake in. You don't even notice you need to heal from the things in the United States. And
Right.
so
Until you
uh,
leave.
until you leave, and I travel back to the United States at least once a month. And now what I do is it's called some type of remorse that I feel for my family and
Oh,
friends
survival's
because
remorse. Survivor's
yes,
remorse.
because now I just want to save everybody. And I have to remind myself, Crystal, everybody don't want this, and that is okay. But
Yes.
also have to remind ourselves to live our true, authentic life, and us being here, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. And so
Yeah.
some of those same people that were were uncomfortable about the decision for us to leave, they're slowly like, okay, I'm getting my passport. I want to come and visit. So sometimes when we plant seeds, we don't know when those seeds are going to grow.
That's true.
All of us have planted seeds in other people. And it might take a year or 2 years down the line before we see those seeds actually flourish. But I'm really happy and grateful for the seeds that I have planted in people.
Did you know that since the 2024 U.S. presidential election, internet searches for how to move abroad have increased by over 1,000%? Maybe you've been searching too, imagining what life abroad could be like. But while you're searching online, I invite you to also search your heart. Moving abroad is a big decision, and it's important to get clear on what a life of freedom and fulfillment looks like for you. I'm Courtney Bowden, creator and host of Black Expat Stories, and nearly 4 years ago, I moved to Mexico. And without a doubt, living abroad has been one of the best decisions I've ever made. That's why I created something special to guide you, the Blaxit soundtrack and soul work journal. It's my free gift to help you reflect, dream, and plan. With 6 curated playlists and printable journal prompts, it's designed to inspire and ground you, just like music and journaling did for me during my own process. My hope is that it will offer you the same support as you navigate your next steps. They say home is where the heart is, but what if your heart is calling you somewhere else?
Yeah. Yes, Crystal. I can so resonate with that idea of folks having resistance to your decision initially and then getting on board with it afterward. And I often say that there's a fine line between being perceived as brilliant or being perceived as quote unquote crazy. Really, the only difference oftentimes is just time. Allowing time to pass by, and some folks can will ultimately recognize that you were a visionary. So, Rachel, what about you? What about your family? How did they respond to your move abroad? And did you feel like you had that support there with that decision?
We didn't tell anybody, family wise. I didn't really say anything to my mom, and neither did my husband, because we were just in a weird space with our families. But we did tell our close friends, and we were able to celebrate and stuff with them. Now, our friends were more attuned to what we were going through. My friends knew that I needed something, or they weren't going to see me anymore. So I've received a lot of support from my friends, even in the amount of space that they've given me. I don't talk to them. I haven't talked to them except for birthdays and holidays. And it's just a quick text. It's nothing ever long and drawn out. So they're giving me my time that I said I needed to just kind of come to terms with what has happened. And when I'm ready to share my story, I'll share it. So this is the beginning of that. But yes, we, for the most part, received support from our friends. They, of course, had questions, but now my husband's friends, they've been here a time or two. Our moms, which we ended up having to reach out to after we got here because we were in some trouble financially, just taken advantage of. But so that's how they found out. And their response to that was, of course, it's panic. What are you going to do? What about Rose? It was like how quick they swooped in to help us stay here.
Yeah.
That's support.
Yeah.
So it just changed our relationship with our moms, perhaps strengthened them. Me and my mom still have some stuff to work through, but we're communicating again. Like I said, they're visiting. We just want them to be able to have a relationship with their grandchild. She's their only one.
Right. Now, despite how polished and incredible it might look on social media, parenting abroad isn't necessarily all glitz and glamour. Would you agree, ladies? And there are real challenges, there are real sacrifices, and that's what I want to get into next for a bit. So, talk to me about what's been harder than you expected in this experience for you.
I know for me, with the kids being at home, is that I've missed out on so much because my daughter, I missed out on all 4 years of her high school career. So even though I'm doing this to make sure I can provide for them and all of that, I've missed out on volleyball seasons. I've missed out on them learning how to drive. Like I've missed, sometimes we say the younger years are the years that you really want to be there, but it's these teenage years. Like even since my daughter's been here, it's like I'm having to remold because she's been around three guys for the last 3 years. So now I'm like stepping in as a mom, being here and actually showing her different things that I missed out. So that's been the biggest challenge for me, is literally missing out on that portion of their lives.
Yeah,
So
I can understand that.
yeah, it's been a lot.
I think for me, the biggest challenge, that's the question, right? The biggest challenge. I think it's just making sure you have a solid community and having to build community over again. And then just having to deal with the real life things that happen. Like I ruptured my tendon in January. So I was basically bedridden for the past like 2 months, like all of January, all of February, like in excruciating pain. And then just having to deal with that with my daughter. And my daughter depends on me she physically depends on me for certain things, and like just having to navigate that from an emotional point of view where you feel helpless. And I think those are some of the things that we discredit, because a lot of people, especially on social media, they romanticize living abroad a lot, and they don't talk about a lot of their down times where maybe like someone has passed away, or you're very ill, or like Rachel was talking about getting, I guess, ripped off, or all of the things that can happen. So I think I think the biggest thing for me is just navigating the emotions of being a parent, understanding that you're out here because the world can seem so small and so big at the same time. And when things happen like that, kind of hits home. And I think too, just the vulnerability of having to depend on other people that are not blood related to you. Crystal brought up the point of needing community, and you absolutely need community out here. And I somehow feel like it's easier in a way because we all have a mutual need for one another, and we know that. We understand, like, we have a need for each other.
Right.
And if we don't stick together, we're very vulnerable. So I think that is one of the reasons why it's really easy in some ways to build the community. But then just having to navigate as a mom, as a woman, that kind of like, okay, I need to be able to depend on other people who are not blood related. And then sometimes I think my blood relatives don't really support me the way I would expect. So that's okay to put myself out there and have to rely on each other, because even with this situation where I can think of so many instances like where my community helped me abroad when I was this past time bedridden after I hurt my leg. We have a Black Women of Malaga group, and there's like over 200 of us here in Malaga, and everybody was like, "Oh, are you okay? Do you need groceries? I can come in. I can come there to your apartment if you need me to. Maybe I can come take your daughter for a walk." So there was the opportunity for that. But then just like I said, just extending myself and being vulnerable and saying, Candice, you really do need that help because you don't have anybody. So I think that's, for me, has been one of the biggest challenges.
And Candice, I'm really happy that you mentioned that too, because it also ties back to what you said you wanted to model for your daughter or help her avoid, which was that strong Black woman narrative. And so by you leaning into your community and being vulnerable with them, you are setting an example for her for how to do that.
Yeah. And it can be scary though. Like
Yeah.
but I think, and it's okay for it to feel scary, but it is a very scary process, because I think too, what adds to the scariness is because this is the first time in my life navigating life without any parents. I don't have any parents. My mom passed away, and my dad passed away in 2018. My mom passed away in 2022. Like, that's just a whole brand new journey of adulting. And then you add living abroad on top of that. And that's just like next level. It's just being vulnerable and having to have those conversations with my daughter. We need other people, or this is Auntie Gulsaya. And my daughter, she has aunties from all over the world. She has aunties from Kazakhstan, and she has aunties in Turkey, and she has aunties that are Spanish. And we have a lot of aunties in the village from all over.
That's beautiful. What about you, Crystal? What was the hardest part that you really didn't see coming?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, this is not really hard, but just making sure we just do constant emotional check-ins with our boys, especially my teenager. He's in a phase right now where, let me go back to, in America, I feel like your value is placed on your 9 to 5 job and you working, right? Here I am, have been an entrepreneur since 2015. Here's my 16-year-old now, and he's, "Mom, what am I going to do for work?" Like, really having to help reset his mind, because this, son, you can't work here. You can't, but you're gonna get paid pennies on the dollar. So really uplifting him and encouraging him on his entrepreneurial journey here before he goes to college. And speaking of college, just something that I have been thinking about as a mom, because I am not moving back to the United States if I can help it. Just thinking about what that is going to look like as far as when my son goes to college in the United States. That has been a journey, and journey and just thoughts that I've been thinking about here in the last couple weeks. That's been difficult for me because here I am. First of all, I have to think about my son going to college, but then him possibly going to college in another country, whether it be America or somewhere else, and trying to really maneuver and navigate and even connect with other people, other moms that have experienced that. That to me, like I said, is just a challenge right now. But I'm sure we will, after continually giving more thought to it, we'll figure it out and connecting with other moms. But like I said, just making sure that that open line of communication and kind of not giving them the same experiences. When I say experiences, like my son, just we thought he wasn't going to have a dance or like a prom, and he just went to his first school dance here yesterday in Playa.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so just making sure that some of those familiar things as it relates to school specifically, that we can recreate that here, for not even only for my child, but for other children here. It's just been something that is just always on my mind because I don't want them to feel any lack.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what we'll continue to talk through.
Yeah, I know that those rites of passage are so important in these teenage years, and it's one of the reasons why I know many families have decided to move back to the States. So I'm so happy that you mentioned that, because oftentimes that can be a barrier for a lot of folks. It can be, and we're going to talk about the myths that you all think should be debunked around parenting abroad, but one of them that I know for sure is not true is that you have to wait until your children graduate from high school before you can make that move. So Crystal, you are a wonderful example of that. Now, Rachel, I don't want to leave you out of this. What's been harder than you expected?
I just realized this week actually that we're going to still have to have the talk. I thought maybe we would avoid that, but I now see that bringing Rose here at 2, and she is the only Black kid at her school. There's Mexican kids, there's Russian, there's other nationalities and races, but she's the only Black kid. And obviously at her age, they're doing a lot of coloring and faces and things like that. And she told me the other day, Mommy, we need to hurry. We need to hurry and be beige. And I said, what do you mean be beige? And she tells me that we need to make our skin beige. So that's new to me. And so I've just been pondering on how we're going to have this conversation, because I just
new territory.
And there's different colors of Mexican people too. So I thought that maybe we could avoid that. So that's been a challenge. And then, or that's a new challenge, but something that we needed to collectively challenge is when we first got here, we were isolated from the Black community. Figuring out that you can, one, trust these people that you talk to on WhatsApp all day long, and allowing yourself to change the way that you are going to decide to parent. I feel like here in Mexico, we have the space to change or adapt to how our children are learning. And I've just been the opportunity to do things in raising her a lot different from the way I was raised. And thus it challenges me, because a lot of the things that she's doing, which are developmentally normal, the temper tantrums, the things that toddlers go through, I find that I have a harder time with those. And the emotional check-ins Crystal was saying, I have a harder time navigating her tantrums, because I haven't learned to step away, know that she's a toddler, and how silly I must be arguing with a toddler. I know I shared with Courtney a time when she took me there where my teeth were on her face as I was talking or yelling. In that, situation, the thing that I did different and the challenge was I apologized to my 3-year-old at the time. I did something totally different than what was done to me. I would have been yelled at. I would have been told to go to my room and just cried out. But no, I womaned up to her and I said, I'm so sorry. Mommy shouldn't have talked to you that way. I shouldn't have yelled. I shouldn't have gotten into your space because you do have space.
Yes.
I realized that that's been our biggest challenge, is really challenging the way that we are deciding to parent different than we were parented.
Yeah. And it sounds like, Rachel, you are breaking generational curses, because how many times, at least in our generation and generations prior, did parents apologize? Oftentimes it was this: you do what I say because I said so, and if I cannot control my anger as a parent, then you just have to deal with it as the child. And learning to really stretch yourself, right, to do it differently, I think says so much about what this expat experience has allowed you to do, and how it has allowed you to grow. And I think that's a wonderful segue to the next question that I have, and I'm so curious about this. When your kids look back on this chapter of their lives, what do you hope that they will carry with them? And what message or legacy do you hope that this decision to move abroad will etch within their lives and in their hearts moving forward?
I'll answer that. I feel like my boys will say that mom and dad saved us. Yeah, that mom and dad saved us, and they gave us a life that we could really experience true freedom.
Wow, that's powerful. I literally had to clutch my chest because I felt that viscerally. Thank you.
I think for me, I would like to leave the legacy for my daughter that you belong everywhere. Because I think that, particularly as Black Americans, the space that we come from, we shrink or we fight to be at a table and or be invited to the table. And I want my daughter to know that she is worth something, that she's valuable, and that she belongs absolutely everywhere.
I want my daughter to see me living and having fun doing so. And it's important to me that she sees me and my husband living too. So she now, her thing is we watch Bluey. I know Bluey is international now. And there's an episode where the mom and the dad, they need some romance. And so Bluey and her sister have a special date night for them. But here recently, we called a sitter, and my daughter goes into my closet and she says, all on her own, she pulls out a dress. She says, Mommy, is this for romance? And I said, Yes, baby, that's a romance. Yes. And she says, Mommy and Daddy have romance. And I said, Yes, we're going to have romance. And we went on a date. The sitter, she told the sitters, it was this whole big thing. But her seeing that we can live and we can have fun, and we kind of want a parent where you could just really relax and kick it with your kids, because they're fun people too. They're just small. That's all.
Right.
But we just want her to be able to see us living and having fun with other adults, and other adult fun looks different, but this is how we play when we're kicking it and having a good time with dominoes and whatnot. But you can still be in the space because there's space for you in the expat world for children and adults to exist at the same time, I think. And I think it's healthy as we take our daughter to the line dance nights. And most of the time, she's the only kid there, but who the hell cares? I know people probably have their judgments, but I don't care. She's having fun and we're having fun. Hell, that's the first time I've probably been out all week.
But I'm happy that you said that, Rachel, because it's one of those things that I have noticed here is that the spaces, there's not a whole lot of segregation between kids and adults. There are spaces, there are places for both to coexist. And it's so fun to watch because growing up, I didn't really see that. I saw my parents working. We worked in our family business, and it was just this monotony, right? And it made adulthood look boring and like a burden. And so I'm so happy that you are being an example to your daughter of what it looks like to live a full human life as a woman. What about you, Kissha? What do you hope that your kids will take away from this chapter in their lives?
For the most part, just doing you and making sure that you take care of yourself, not listening to the people around you all the time. And I tell them all the time, the world is so big. God didn't just make the US, He made it all. And they've seen me travel, they've seen me do so many things. And I live by the standard of be you. That's my saying. I say it all the time, be you, do live for you. So that's what I want them to understand. There's nothing holding you back from anything.
Yeah. Now, I hinted at it a little bit earlier, and I want to get back to this. What's one myth about parenting abroad that you'd like to personally debunk for folks?
I know one is that your kids won't learn the language. And I know you ladies can probably attest to that. A lot of parents, especially coming from Anglophone countries and particularly the United States, they are overly concerned about their kids fitting in or not learning the language. And they're like, oh, I want my kid to go to an international school. So I get that, but your kids will be okay. They'll be okay. There's an adjustment period, but they're going to live. And I think the benefits will outweigh anything negative. And then also I think like educational options, like there's so many different educational options. You don't have to be fearful of, because a lot of people, they think because they're so stuck about what's happening in the States, you have to understand like the US does not have a good educational system in comparison with the rest of the world. We don't even use the metric system, for God's sakes.
Right.
So for you to sit there and worry about your kids' quality of education, trust me, your kids are going to get a better education 9 times out of 10 outside the States. And you can definitely implement that. And then I would say maybe like the last thing that I would say, and this Rachel had said something that made me think of this thought, is that you don't have to give up your culture 100% to fit in. And I think that's really important for us as Black Americans in particular, is to make sure that even if you're learning the language, even if you're getting acclimated to a new culture, that we still maintain our culture. We're still us, no matter where we go, and making sure to instill that in your child and making sure to share the story, share the soul food recipes, share all of those things so that they don't lose themselves, and let them know that you don't have to give up all of you and all of your culture just to immerse yourself in another culture.
That's such a good point, Candice.
Grow the greens. Grow the greens.
Grow the greens.
I'm growing.
Matter of fact, we're starting a community garden. The Black Women of
Yeah.
Malaga, we're starting a community garden. We're going to start doing Sunday dinners here once a month now that the weather is warmer. So those are all the things that we are doing to make sure that our kids still grow up in the culture.
What about you, Crystal? What's one myth about parenting abroad that you'd like to debunk for folks?
I would say a lot of people, because I'm in a lot of move abroad groups, a lot of people are like against moving with children, teenagers, I should say, because they're just like, oh, it's just going to be bad for them. They're going to have all this social anxiety. You don't know Spanish. Like immersion has been the best. And you won't know it unless you just do it. Yeah, those are two things. You can leave America with children, with teenagers, and you don't have to know the language. Well, don't wait. Like immersion is the best. The children, my kids being here in school, having a tutor to help them along, being in a Spanish speaking school, it has helped them tremendously.
I would say mine, since I have a little one, you don't have to be married to that pediatrician. You don't have to be married to the one in the United States. These doctors here are more than qualified. And when we first got here, our daughter got sick. I'm not going to lie, I kind of got a little annoyed with how long the exam was. I was ready to get out of there. I was still in American mind. So I was like, why is this is taking too long? We figured it out. But he was very thorough. And would we have experienced that in the States? No. And now I do have a really good relationship with our pediatrician. She's my friend. She's a Black woman, all that. But she let me know when I told her we were doing this. She was like, unless it's an emergency or you need a record she was like, have faith. They'll be able to take care of her. You don't need to call me. You don't need to check their work. You'll be fine. So to parents out there thinking you won't have access to the medication, the this, the that, whatever your child needs, it's all available right here, and oftentimes cheaper.
You just freed some
And
folks, Rachel.
and you get quality standard of care. And the fact that you can go to the pharmacia and see a doctor for a little or nothing, and there's no hoops to go through. You don't have to make an appointment. It's 2 weeks out, and your kid is fever free by then. And the ease of them coming to your home and just everything, it takes away all of that parental worry when something happens to your kid. They'll be fine.
And I'm sure so many people watching and listening have that as a concern, the medical piece. So thank you for speaking to that. What about you, Kissha? What's one myth about parenting abroad that you want to debunk right here, right now?
Mine isn't necessarily about my story, but just listening to Candice and Crystal, I agree with what they said, because even though my kids aren't here, I still pay attention, just because of maybe one day, even my youngest will be like, okay, I'm coming. So I think that the education is great. Even with my daughter right now, she's graduating high school in May. She just finished early. That's why she's here. But looking at going to colleges abroad and knowing that she'll be fine. I've had friends that their kids have wanted to go to college abroad and they're like, oh my gosh, no, they can't do that. And I'm like, y'all don't understand. They're probably going to get a better education. And even having kids that are bilingual, that's a plus as well, because when they go into the workforce, you're already 10 steps ahead of someone like us that aren't bilingual. So I think that don't stay focused on their education in the US is the greatest, because it's not. And the metric system thing, I'm over here at 47 years old and I'm like, I don't even know Celsius from Fahrenheit and kilometers from miles. And I'm like, yo, I feel set back. Like I need to go back to school.
I feel the same way, Kissha. When I try to do those conversions, man, it's rough. It is.
I can't even put stuff in the oven because I'm going, Siri, what is
195 Celsius in Fahrenheit? Yeah.
It's helping them out. And even my daughter, she's wanting to go into marine biology. And I found out like one of the top schools is over in Cozumel. So it's just, there's so much more.
Most of this education out here is hands-on and practical learning. You're out in the streets learning stuff. We're doing Montessori, which we couldn't afford in the States. I don't know what made Montessori and regular daycare such a different, but anywho, but the amount of stuff that our daughter has learned, being that when we got here, she really wasn't verbal for her to be 2. She wasn't talking very much. Now she talks a lot in two languages and no sign language, Lord. I can only attribute that to being here because I had taken her out of school prior to us coming here. She was out of school for about 4 months because it just got too expensive.
Now, each of you have shared what this move has meant for you and your families, but let's zoom out a little bit because you're also part of something that's much bigger. We're seeing more and more Black families making the leap abroad, especially now, given the results of the 2024 presidential election. And so many people are in search of feeling freer, more aligned, and more peaceful and safer, like all of you mentioned. And from your vantage point, how do you feel about this growing wave of migration, this emerging Blaxit movement? What excites you about it? And then what also gives you some pause?
I think it's time. It's time for the next great migration. I was having this conversation with another friend of mine's, and we were talking about that the US is still the plantation, the proverbial plantation, but you don't realize you're on the plantation unless you escape it. And there are a lot of those of us that are still back there, and they have an inkling that they need to be free and that they want to be free, but they're scared because all they know is the plantation. All they know is the system that they're used to, and they're scared that they would rather deal with the devil they know than to deal with something else. But there are those of us who escaped the plantation, and we know that there's a whole big world out there where we don't have to deal with half of the things that we're dealing with. So I'm happy to see those of us who are waking up and realizing, okay, we can pick up, move, and build communities in other places that are more friendly, because we have been building and building in the US. And I know a lot of people, they say our ancestors built this country up and leaving. I do understand that, but it's like we've been building in a sandbox. We've been trying to build this house in a sandbox, and the bully just keeps knocking the sandcastle over every time. And so I feel like building in the US is like building on sand and a foundation that's not solid. And there are places on the planet where you can build a more solid foundation and you don't have to put up with the barriers that are being put against you intentionally not to get ahead. So for me, I'm happy that people are getting free. And I'm happy to see that people are choosing their peace and their prosperity and their peace of mind and their dignity, because we are in a generational, ancestral relationship with a system and a group of people that are narcissists. And I think once our people wake up to realize that we are in an ancestral narcissistic relationship with a group of people who will never change, you have to wake up one day and say, okay, this relationship is not working. And this person is they're never going to change. They're never going to change. And I need to change me, and I need to change my location. And then I think our people will experience the peace that they need. So I'm happy to see it, and I'm here for it.
And Candice, what gives you pause about this next great migration and a lot of the urgency that comes with it, especially these days?
The only thing that gives me any sort of pause is that I feel like a lot of our people have not gone through the intentional ancestral healing that they need to go to maybe be in other ecosystems. That's the only thing that gives me pause. But then again, you cannot heal in the same environment that you're constantly traumatized in. So it's one of those things where you have to like gradually kind of step out there in the water. And that's really how I started my journey. Like when I first started traveling, I started traveling to the Caribbean and then to West Africa, because that was nice for me to be in environments where I was not the only Black person. Like, it felt good to go outside and everybody was Black. I could go the whole day and not see one white person. It was just me. And so for me, it felt good in that sense. It did something to my psyche to make me feel a part of the global majority. There's a level of healing that I went through in that to get to where I am now. And I think our people have to understand that. And I think the other thing that gives me pause is that I think a lot of us who are considering this move have to understand we don't live in utopia. So if you are hoping that there is a place on the planet where you will never experience any discrimination of any kind, like, just get over it. That place does not exist. But there are places that are better than where you are and will allow you to have more sovereignty over your life. Yeah.
That's good.
I know for me, it excites me to hear people talk about it. Like, I do host yacht parties for tourists every week, and the conversation is always like, how'd you do it? What made you do it? I want to go. And it's just like, I'm giving free information all the time. I'm like, do this, do that, go here, go here. But I do agree with you. The healing is also a big deal. You can't just immediately move and think that your life is going to change tomorrow. So you do have to prepare yourself, but I'm excited to see people want to go do something different and realize, again, like I said, what I'm teaching my children, that there's more to you. You don't have to deal with the BS. You don't have to. Like, you can go. Nobody's holding you. There's no chains. Go before you can't. And that's right, because it could be a day where nobody can leave.
Say that louder for the folks dragging their feet in the back.
Yeah. Go before you can't.
Now that's a word.
Yes.
That's a word.
That's the truth.
Make that move. Make the move.
What about you, Rachel and Crystal? What are your thoughts on this emerging Blaxit movement? What excites you, and also what concerns you?
I get excited just learning and knowing that really wherever we go is home, because we've been all these places. Our people belong to all of these places where we're migrating to, but we're just returning home. And learning about that, I hate that I'm not going to be able to go on the Juneteenth excursion, because I've already researched those people and they look a lot like my child. The African slaves who migrated down to Mexico and built a whole life and community and are a people here. I like that part. The part that gives me pause, though, is the people who get caught up in the romanticized version of being Black and being abroad, and they want to come but they want to still be American, but
It's
in
the
an yeah, and that is the thing that I guess what I would say is a pet peeve of mine too. I experienced that with family that visited. Why do we have to wait so long? We're in Mexico. You're going to wait in line. Okay, that's part of the process. Chill, listen to something, relax, and vibe out. The wind is blowing, the sun is out. Enjoy your time in line. And just know that, just try to, because I've been thinking so negatively prior to coming here, just finding the positives in things that may take a long time, or in things that are not as mechanical as it is in the United States. I get to wait in line and have a chat with my kid at the bank. I get to wait in line for my food that's going to be really yummy, and I get to talk to somebody new about this yummy food or this taco stand. How long have you been coming here?
Yeah.
Or
and it's made to order.
Yeah, just trying to live amongst the local people. And it bothers me when people come here and don't try. You want to come here and exercise your American rights. That don't exist. So that's the only part I worry about, is the gentrification part, because I know that it's not only limited to white people and colonizing, but we have to be sure that we as expats don't come and colonize when we're trying and shape it into, well, we're just trying to preserve our culture, but you're excluding the culture that you're imposing yourself upon. So just constantly remembering that being here, yes, we deserve to be here and we are home, but it's also a gift and we should cherish it and be kind and not try to exercise so much privilege.
Thank you for saying that, because that mindset shift from walking in this I won't even say privilege, but entitlement really can hold a lot of people back. What about you, Crystal?
It brings me great joy that our people are getting free. I'm in so many like Facebook groups, and like African Americans are getting out of America and they're going all over, not just here to Mexico. They're going to, I see a lot of us moving to Thailand, like a lot. But it brings me great joy that people can really experience this peace that surpasses even your own understanding. And I have the privilege of having a platform. My strongest platform is TikTok, of having that power of influence through my journey, my Black family forged journey of moving out of the United States. And I don't take that influence lightly at all. And then to have the privilege to reach back and say, okay, I did this for me and my family. Now I'm going to help others to do it. That brings me great joy to be able to serve people in that capacity. What gives me pause is people in the United States, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of anxiety, and people are just ready to just do it. And this does take some research to doing this. You don't want to just move out of the United States just because you saw somebody else doing it or you saw your favorite creator doing it. You want to do your research. Another thing that kind of gives me pause is people moving and not wanting to heal. I didn't know I needed to heal when I moved out of America. I didn't know. I did not know. But now that I know, these are some things that I've been facing. These are some things that have been instilled in me that I need to change, right? That is giving me pause, because people, they're not willing to do the work. And some work has to be done when you moved out of America. Whether you like it or not, your mindset has to change. Like in America, we live in this society where everything is just fast paced. We don't want to stand. That's why we come to a place like Mexico and stand in the line, and we're so upset and impatient because we're always on the go in America. And in America, we don't have the chance to slow down. So those are some things that I wish people would take advantage of when they move, and not moving to a new country, not immersing themselves, and not coming with this American entitlement.
Yeah.
They don't owe you anything because you are an American.
So key. Now, I could really sit here and talk to y'all for hours, and this has been such an incredible conversation, so insightful, but we got to go. And before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from each of you on this. A final word of advice for those watching and listening, if you will. So, if another Black mom told you tomorrow, I'm thinking of making the move abroad, what would you say to her?
I'll go first just because like I said, I did this last week with a group of women from my hometown. And I've said it several times in this, just do what you feel like is right for you. What works for you, even if it's not coming to Mexico, wherever it is, do what's right for you and don't let anybody else influence your decision. Whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends, just if you know what's going to work for you, you know what you need to do, you know the work you need to put in, and you know who you need to ask. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. So take that leap if that's what you feel like you need to do better for yourself.
I would say my advice would be to just do it. You deserve peace. You deserve freedom. You deserve the life that you have dreamt of. And if moving out of America, if that's something that you have been thinking maybe you cannot attain, hopefully by seeing all of us beautiful ladies on here, this has given you inspiration to take the leap that you have been afraid to do it. So do it.
And I'll also piggyback on that. Yeah, I agree. Just do it. Make sure to do your research. Ask yourself really what it is that you want out of your experience and what it is that you feel like you need to live abroad, because I think answering those questions will help you to find the path of least resistance. Ask yourself the important questions like, how much infrastructure do you need? Are you willing to learn another language? What kind of healthcare system are you looking for? And then also, what kind of values? What are your core values? And finding countries that align with that, so that you can find that place of peace, as Crystal said, because we do deserve peace. And then that you can find the path of least resistance and understand that your child will be okay, that you're giving your children a gift in leaving the US and having a different experience. I think, and then also understanding that you take yourself with you wherever you go. As Crystal said, the healing piece, you're going to have to intentionally do the healing, the ancestral healing, and your own personal healing. You're going to have to intentionally do that and embark on that journey. And then I guess the final thought would be, if it doesn't work out, just know that you can go back, or at least we hope. Or at least we hope. We don't know what's going to happen.
These days we can't always say, but
Yeah.
we would like to hope.
No, but we're going to say, tentatively anyways, you can always go back if it doesn't work out.
I say do it too. I agree wholeheartedly. Just to be silly, if you want to lose weight, you're not going to lose weight in the United States with that trauma. It's gonna just slide right off when you move. I am a whole different person, which is what everyone else said when I went back over Christmas. Oh, I didn't even recognize you. You look like a totally different person. I know, because I done got over some stuff and it's gone. So
You better preach up in here, Rachel.
testify. I do what I can. But yeah, do that thing. Bring them kids. They'll be okay. And if they aren't, like Candice said, you can go back. You can go back and start over or go somewhere else. That's what we have passports for. And if the Lord says the same, we can still get to these places and go, and our passport is still held in high regard. But yeah, do it scared, but just don't regret not doing it. At least try.
Like I said, this conversation has been insightful, enlightening, uplifting, and inspiring. And I thank each of you for taking the time to share your journeys with the Black Expat Stories fam, for opening up and being vulnerable with us, for sharing your heart and your wisdom. And I just know that what has been said here, what has been discussed, will hit people so deeply and will support them on their own journey if they choose to move abroad. Thank you. Thanks for listening and watching as we continue exploring the journeys of Black expats finding freedom, healing, and belonging across the globe. Are you feeling inspired to embark on your own expat journey? Hit subscribe to join the conversation and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Black Expat Stories for sneak peeks and more expat insights. Now, if these conversations resonate and you want to help this platform grow, then I encourage you to become a friend of the show. Not only will you enjoy early ad-free access to new episodes, exclusive bonus content, and behind-the-scenes glimpses, you'll also be supporting our mission to amplify the voices of the pioneers at the vanguard of the next great migration. Just head to blackexpatstories.com/support to join our growing community. However you choose to connect, keep your passport ready and your dreams without borders. Until next time, I wish you peace, love, and passport stamps.